It's extra innings for the 2009 session of the Florida legislature, where political hardball includes pay cuts for state workers earning more than $45,000 a year and a strikeout for Central Florida's Sunrail project. All of that about the budget this edition of Power Play with our guests, Catherine Dolinsky of the Tampa Tribune and Dave Royce of the News Service of Florida. So lawmakers come back Thursday after this cooling off period for the budget. What's going to be in that $65 billion budget?
Well, for starters, a lot of budget cuts. It was a long weekend. The budget chairs and their respective committees met. I think it was maybe like 10 hours off and on Saturday, and then they came back again on Sunday to hammer out difficult cuts. For example, Florida Forever, the popular land conservation program, wound up with no new money for next year. They're still going to be able to do the bond issue authorized last year, but a lot of environmentalists were stunned that the Senate finally gave up on that.
Well, Dave, in a state that's got nothing but fiscal freefall and revenue shortfalls, one tax increase is certain. What is it?
Cigarette tax. After a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years of pushing for a higher tax on cigarettes, mostly by healthcare advocates who previously weren't really that concerned about the budget. They pushed it as a way to prevent people from smoking. Finally, they're going to get a cigarette tax, $1 per pack increase. Florida's still going to be below the national, where most of the other states are. It's been a tough fight, even though states like Kentucky and North Carolina, where they grow a lot of tobacco, have raised their cigarette tax. Florida's one of the last to do it.
Well, here we are at the center of state employment in the capital of Tallahassee. And one thing's for certain, state employees who haven't had a raise in 3 years, 2% pay cuts for those making more than $45,000 a year. How bad is that for state employees?
Well, for the ones who are making $45,000 a year, it's really bad. I mean, 2% is a lot of money when you're getting by on 45 grand. And the fact that they haven't had a raise in a few years, I think is unfortunately an indication of where this legislature, the Republican-dominated legislature, a lot of these guys came in under a time when Jeb Bush was governor and was saying something to the effect of, let's empty out some of these buildings. There's still a view in the Republican legislature that a lot of state government is unnecessary, and a lot of what some of those people do is unnecessary.
Catherine, if you're a state employee, is this a reflection that the employee unions don't have much clout at all in a tough economy?
Well, I think it depends on who you ask. When we were earlier in the budget process, we were looking at potentially much severer cuts for state employees. There was also talk earlier in the session about maybe collapsing some state agencies into one another. It's hard to believe that major layoffs wouldn't have come because of that. So you sort of heard some mixed messages from folks in the union community. They know it could have been worse, but clearly they could not stop that train.
Well, the big priority for Central Florida lawmakers and folks in Central Florida, including news media and every opinion leader, was the Sunrail project, derailed for a second year in a row. What went wrong? Why is it off the tracks?
Sunrail. What didn't happen with Sunrail? I mean, it was definitely a dramatic week. Senator Constantine tried just about everything he could think of to get that passed, but he kept running flat into Senator Paula Dockery, who almost single-handedly, once again, stopped that legislation. Although it's worth saying she did also have a strong advocate this year to work with in Senator Rhonda Storms.
Well, Dave, is there a problem that Central Florida miscalculated its strategy on this?
They may have failed to get buy-in from other places in the state, not just Lakeland, where Paula Dockery's from, and there was a lot of opposition to the plan. But you got to build coalitions to do local things in the legislature, and they tried that. There was a last-minute effort to really get the South Florida lawmakers on board by throwing in some money for Tri-Rail, the rail down there, but it just was a little too late, I think.
All right, we're going to go to your respective power play of the week. Catherine.
Well, I think we probably just discussed it. I mean, I think it's hard to come up with a better power play than Senator Dockery. Being able to stop that legislation, she was up against an armload of lobbyists, Central Florida leadership, the House Speaker designate, the governor, Senate leaders, and once again, she made her case that this was not a good deal for Florida.
Flexing big muscle. Dave, your choice.
I'll go with a coalition of sort of little guy advocates who have pushed for years to get streamlining of KidCare, the state's subsidized health care program for children. They've been trying to make it so that it's harder to knock kids out of there and easier to get kids in for a couple of years. They finally succeeded this year. Nan Rich Glorioso, and all the people who pushed for streamlining kid care and finally got it.
Well, I'm going to host prerogative the choice of Mallory Horn, the late great statesman who was both Speaker of the House and President of the Senate. Catherine Dolinsky, Dave Royce, thanks. Good luck in this last week of an extended session. For the latest political news, go to the Safety Review, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.